Welcome. Hi, I'm Mikki, and this is Mikkipedia, where I sit down and chat to doctors, professors, athletes, practitioners, and experts in their fields related to health, nutrition, fitness, and wellbeing. And I'm delighted that you're here. Hello everyone, it's Mikki here. You're listening to Mikkipedia, and this week on the podcast I have the pleasure of speaking to my friend Michelle Matangi, who is a health and lifestyle coach down in Taranaki. And I came across Michelle maybe 7 years ago when we would attend some of the same conferences. She would come to some of my speaking events, and I got to know her through her old page, Primal Journey, which detailed out her transformation using, at the time, diet and exercise to help transform her physical self. However, Michelle and I talk about that transformation over the last 15 years and how, of course, it started with her body, but it was so much more than that, and how she's really transformed her mind and attitude, and how she uses her knowledge to now help other people. So Michelle shares today on the podcast how she found herself turning to food as a way to distract herself from things in her life that were uncomfortable or difficult to deal with. And I think that all of us probably at some point can appreciate what's going on in that instance. We discuss how she discovered Mark's Sisson, Mark's Daily Apple, and the primal way of eating, which is a version of paleo, is sort of this initial start to help begin her path to ditching the dieting mentality, and just really focused on nourishing herself. We talk about how it's a long journey, and it's an ongoing journey, and how she's transitioned away from some of these really strict rules or perceived strict rules to find real peace and balance with regards to her relationship with food, but her relationship with everything in her life. And she realized ultimately that it wasn't food or diet that would help her in the long run, but she actually needed to be able to know herself. And Michelle and I talk about the resources that she used to really help her get out of that cycle or food mentality, and now what she uses with her own clients to help them establish just a better relationship with food, but ultimately a better relationship with themselves. I really enjoyed this chat. Michelle was so open. She's always so open and just so kind and caring, and I felt really privileged to be able to chat to Michelle. Before we kick on into the interview though, I'll just want to let you know that you can get yourself a sweet little deal from Newzest, www.newzest.co.nz, for 20% off any of their products using the code Mikki20. If you love the podcast and you want to support us, the best thing that you can do is hit subscribe on your favourite podcast platform, even leave us a 5-star review. That would be amazing. Or jump over onto my website to level up that support and jump on the recipe portal option. So $12 a month, you get regularly updated recipe inspiration that are all generally lower carb, minimally processed food, and just little tasty recipe numbers. Weekly email from me, the support from a Facebook group, weekly Q&A, and the opportunity for me to answer your nutrition related questions. So that's over on my website, mickywilliden.com. However, team, sit back, relax, and enjoy this conversation that I have with my friend Michelle Matangi. So, Michelle, we're going to talk today about your transformation, and not only obviously your very obvious and actually like really public physical transformation, because you've been so open over, I want to say the last 10 years, probably even longer, about your journey with that. And of course, your level of, maybe it's part of identity. Like, I feel like that's really changed for you. Like, you've used that knowledge and sort of used what you've learned about yourself and almost like transitioned it to be as helpful in other ways. So I really want to talk to you about that. But
awesome.
Really just my first question is, did you cold water plunge this morning?
I 100%. Like I actually have only just warmed up. I did it at 10 o'clock.
Yeah.
So that I could give my body some time to warm up. But yeah, I totally got in my freezer. It's about 2 degrees at the moment. So ice floating around everywhere.
You are definitely one of my inspirations for that. And I have mentioned this on other podcasts, and I'll mention it again because Barry edits it, but I really want one. And
you need to get one.
I know, 100%. Right? Someone suggested getting a, because I've seen your one is like it's a long chest freezer.
Yeah, big one.
Yeah. Someone suggested to me that I get one, actually Barry suggested that I get one that was higher and then I could like sit in and it took up more space. And I'm like, babes, that is like clearly a disastrous thing to do. Imagine if I got so cold, I couldn't get out. And no one was around.
That is a concern. I know. And you've got I actually have to be careful because when I was doing them like every day, I actually got super adapted to them. So I've actually stopped doing them every single day because you actually adapt so much to the point that I was kind of not getting as much benefit. And then I wanted to stay in for longer. Yeah. And I've read that if you stay in for longer, your body literally can like kind of shut down and then you can't get out. So it's like you've really got to be careful with this stuff because you know, like small doses is wise. But yeah, when I first began, I definitely made sure like Mike was home and I was going to be safe because you've got to think about these things. Like it is quite serious.
Yeah, you do. And actually what you just said there about small doses, I also feel that what you share on social and potentially a lot of your journey is around this minimum effective dose. Like,
absolutely.
What things that you've put in place to help sort of transform yourself, and then what other people can do to have a similar transformation, yet of course appropriate to their situation and their context and stuff. Was that a hard lesson for you to learn, Michelle, that whole thing?
Yeah, totally. I've definitely always been that kind of all or nothing, all in or all out. Yeah. And it took a while for me to learn that, you know, the dose makes the poison, and you actually are so much better sometimes taking your time, making a longer time, smaller amount, getting your ego out of the way and actually just committing to a smaller amount, whether that's a 5-minute walk every day versus an hour walk now and then is kind of the everyday one is better, you know, in my opinion, because you're then becoming the person who goes for a walk versus, you know, the sporadic like, oh, I feel like it today, so I'm going to go do an hour walk. Whereas every day you probably don't feel like even doing a 5-minute, you know, if you're someone that's gone from being on the couch. So like those little steps are things that, you know, and it's same with like cutting out sugar. I think completely cutting it out is probably not going to happen for every single person, but minimizing and trying to shift your sugar to your meals, for your blood, you know, all those sorts of little things. It's like we're so fast to jump in all in and we don't stop to think about, well, what about our previous habits, and we've got to change these things over time because it won't stick, you know. So that is a massive part of I had to kind of almost get a bit of humility and go, you know what, I actually can't change every single thing at once. And I think it's actually better to learn that way, but it took me a while. It took me a while to learn that lesson.
So, Michelle, a lot of people who will be listening will be familiar with you and your journey, but not everyone will be. So can you sort of take a step back, right to sort of where it started for you?
Oh, gosh, it's such a long time ago when I think about it. So this is back in the day. Obviously, you would have been around, but, you know, like paleo primal was still so fresh. It was like in its infancy. And I think it was maybe Mark's Daily Apple was probably the one thing that I sort of came across. I'd already toyed with Atkins long before that. But to kind of try and cut a long story short, I've struggled with my weight since I was quite young. Hit the age of 21 and found myself seriously depressed, very, very overweight and using food. And I'd watched, obviously, my mum had used food for comfort, and like I guess we always had dessert. There was a lot of habits that had been, I guess, put in place that were not healthy. And I didn't grow up in an environment that was, there wasn't a lot of movement encouraged. It just wasn't that kind of life. It was a kind of survival. My dad was very, very unwell mentally. So those sorts of things, it was survival mode. It wasn't really like thriving, you know. And so as I got older, you know, I started to use food, that kind of thing. Also alcohol, drugs, that sort of thing. So it was very much like escapism. Yeah. Total escapism. I I started losing weight when I hit rock bottom. I was like, oh my God, I'm so overweight. I feel terrible in my skin. Did Atkins, and then I gained all that weight back because it was unsustainable, as it always is. And then I think it was pretty much, I'd done the Atkins thing. I'd gained the weight back. And then I was like, you know what? I hit 107 kilos, and I was like, I can't live like this anymore. And the only way I know has worked for me, like successfully to a degree, which technically it really wasn't that successful because I gained it back, but was a lower carb approach.
Yeah.
And that's when I discovered Mark's Daily Apple, and it seemed very like, oh, this is actually quite balanced. Like there's still fruit involved, and it was just very, it just had a good approach to me. And that's really, I threw myself into that. And in a year, I lost 42 kilos.
Wow. And how tall are you, Michelle?
5'7".
Okay. Yeah. Amazing.
So
can I ask as well, because you've been married for basically ever.
Yeah, I've been with Mike since I was 18. So I've been with him, and I'm 41 this year. So we've been together 22 and a bit years, but long time.
Yeah. So he's been with you along this journey
whole time
as well. And and when you sort of were at the point, if you can remember, like, look, I'm going to do this approach. What was his reaction?
Oh, he was super supportive because, of course, he'd watched me. He's loved me every size, which he's such an amazing guy. He obviously always has loved the person I am, the spirit I am, not just how I look, but it was more me that was concerned. But he was starting to get quite concerned when I was just getting bigger and bigger, and I was struggling to tie my shoes. I was out of breath. I was just exhausted. And anyway, one day he said, should we take some pictures? And that was, and he tried to do it in such a gentle way because he's such a gentle soul, but it was so confronting seeing those pictures. And when I look back on them, I just had tears running down my face because I had lived in such a state of denial, which I think, a lot of us can see what we want to see. So when I'd get ready in the mirror, I looked at my face, and I always made my hair pretty because I've always had nice hair. So it was always like I'd focus on those things, and I just almost ignored the physical because I was like, well, I can't do anything about that.
Yeah.
And then when he, took those photos, it was like, oh my goodness, like I need to do something because I'm, I think at the point that he'd taken those, I might have been about 25.
Yeah.
Might have been, maybe a little bit less than that, but it was so confronting. And I was like, I am morbidly obese. Like when I actually realized, I was like, wow. And it gave me, I guess it shocked me into action, I guess you could say.
Yeah. And that's interesting because I have so many conversations with people who say something to the sort of extent that I had no idea that I was as big as I was until I jumped on the scale and saw I had gained, I was 15 kilos heavier than I thought I was, which is pretty much what you've said, that they had avoided the metric which would tell them, some extent to how bad it was, and then focus on other things. So it was a real shock to them as well, which is exactly what you've just said.
Yeah, like 100%. I mean, somehow in my mind, I had made being under 100 kilos somehow okay, which it wasn't, but how you just justify certain things, and I was going through a lot mentally myself. I was struggling with my mental health, and I guess when I saw that number, it was 107.1 kilos, and I was like, never again will I be this. Like never again. I'd made that deal with myself. I was like, never again. I'd gone. It was a sequence of events. It was that, hitting that number, seeing that, the photo that had been taken. I went shopping for a new pair of jeans because I was realising the stretchy ones I was wearing were not fitting. And I went into Jeans West and got the 2-for-1 deal and realised I had to get a size 20 and size 22. And that was like, I had been like a size 6, size 8. So this was like a real shock to my system. And I was like, oh my God, bought those. And I was like, I'm never going to end up in this position again. I cried in the dressing room. It was just one of those real moments. And the other moment was my sister had her baby shower, and they did the whole guess of the circumference of your waist. And my stomach was bigger than my full-term pregnant sister.
Wow.
And that was probably the real kicker, because I was like, I'm really unhealthy. This is not just about how I look anymore. I'm really unhealthy. Like I'm struggling with my health.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Amazing.
And so, Mike was super supportive of anything I did. Like he was just my cheerleader. 100%.
Yeah.
Always has been.
Yeah. And so over the course of that year, you lost 40 kilos?
42. Yeah.
42 kilos.
Yeah.
Wow. That's amazing. And how easy was it?
I mean, looking back, I was so dedicated.
Yeah.
And I was so focused. I kind of made it like my full-time job.
Yeah.
And I know that sounds extreme, but I think when you're losing a big amount of weight like that, especially, a lot of people need to have weight loss surgery to lose that amount of weight. Like it's a lot of weight to shift. And I just made it like my job. It was like, this is the most important thing. I need to get this weight off for my health, for my future, for I want to stay in my marriage. There was just so many things that I knew, and I my mum struggled with her weight, my dad struggled with her weight, my whole family, and so I kind of had seen my future, what my future could be, and I really didn't want that, and so I guess I super focused on what I could have, not what I couldn't have, and back then I was quite strict. It was very much quite low carb. I didn't have potatoes, didn't have any of that, which I needed to do what I needed to do then to get that amount of weight off, and it worked for that. Yeah. But then what followed that was also a lot of up and down in terms of me starting to understand that I couldn't have that really strict approach to food for the rest of my life. It served its purpose for that 1 year, but I needed to find some more balance in there, and that's taken a really long time to learn.
Yeah,
a really long time to learn.
So when did you start your Hungry for Balance page?
So Hungry for Balance, well, first it was Primal Journey.
Yeah,
so it began as Primal Journey, long time ago, and then it went to Hungry for Balance. And I'm just trying to think, I'm pretty sure it would have been about 7 years after I'd lost that weight, because I kept it as Primal Journey, and then I think I changed it to Hungry for Balance because I was like, I'm hungry for balance. Like I didn't want to just live without potatoes or bread or anything for the rest of my life. Obviously, as a, I guess it was around that era that I started seeing a lot of hormonal issues coming up for myself and then other people, and realizing, okay, for women, obviously, it's a little bit tricky if you go too low carb for too long. There's such a thing as too much of a good thing that you can kind of take it to extremes. And I love potatoes and I love having dessert, and I wanted to find balance, and I guess I'd shifted the weight, but now it became about, okay, I want to be healthy and I want to have a good approach to food and feel like I'm not living in a prison of only being able to eat this, and this, and not being able to enjoy myself. And so I guess, I changed to the Hungry for Balance, and that was really a massive learning curve of what can I eat and still, have a good relationship with food, and not get hyper focused on one thing and it's taken me such a long time to learn that. And really up until I would say 4 and a bit years ago, did I really, I'd gained a little bit of weight back. I had some emotional stuff going on with my father, and I realized, man, I'm still using food a little bit, like emotionally. And I really wanted to, I was like, I don't want to be back here again. Like I'd got back up to 80 kilos, and I was like, I hit that point that I was like, oh my God, I'm back here. And I don't want to be here again. This is the slippery slope back into where I was. And at that point I was like, I need to actually deal with my emotional relationship with food now.
Okay.
I knew logistically what was going to help me lose weight in terms of food wise. Like I knew that, but I wanted to understand what was driving me. Like, why was I constantly seeking external circumstances to try and change how I was feeling inside?
Yeah. Okay.
And so I really had to dig deep. And
And Michelle, what did you do? Like, if someone, what kind of strategies and tools did you use to get you back to sort of where you want to be?
Yeah, a lot. So at first I had to recognize that, again, I was I found that denial place again. I was what I'd say like a compulsive comfort seeking behavioral kind of person. I just always wanted to be comfortable. And I listened to this podcast. I think it really helped me big time through my whole transition, but there were a lot of things that going on. This one line was, you can never get enough of something that almost works.
Okay. Yep.
So when you think about that in terms of, for me it was eating or shopping.
Yeah.
because they gave me this feeling of like dopamine, right? Got a bit of a dopamine hit. And that was what I was seeking. But it didn't work long term. You know, it worked for the very short amount of time. And then I was like, man, I'm quickly left feeling very deflated after that, you know?
Yeah.
And so, it began a journey of going in, you know, and that began with meditation. That began with walking every day, you know, getting out in nature, realizing, hey, like I need to use this body of mine and like learn to connect with nature again and to connect with my own body again, because I'd almost lost that connection to myself, like who I really was, and like connection to my body and listening to it again, because I think I'd overridden that a lot by external rules.
Yeah, totally.
You know?
And I can see that. Like, so in part of you gaining the weight and getting to the position where you had to lose weight, you had to ignore a lot of the cues around hunger and appetite and how you might have potentially felt after eating. You know, of course, instantaneously it gives you that dopamine hit initially, but that post feeling. But then also when you're trying to lose weight, you have to, the structure and rules allow you to sort of do that, and you find there is security, I suppose, in that.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So you kind of have to, I absolutely see what you're saying. I've heard a quote, that was a great quote that you just said, and I saw actually you reference, I'm going to say Anna Lempka. I'm not sure.
Yes, Anna Lempka. Yeah. I was just saying to Mike before, how do I pronounce her name? So she's Dopamine Nation.
Yes.
Yeah.
Amazing
book.
Totally.
Yeah. So that she is honestly like, I think everyone needs to read that book.
Yeah.
That was and that's actually quite recent. But that was another one that really helped me grasp dopamine and really why we are constantly seeking. And in this time now, we're always on our phone. We're always distracted. We're always, you know, you can take things that may even seem healthy and then take them to extremes, you know. We're not very good at dealing with boredom.
No, totally. And if I think about it just in today's in the environment we're in today, dopamine hit for us are those 1 p.m. briefings. That
100%.
That they've suddenly brought back for whatever purpose. I have no idea. And you sort of get sort of tied to this, want to know the numbers, want to know what's going on, want to know the changes. Whereas actually, if you stepped back, like nothing would actually change day to day, but in your head, you're sort of seeking something day to day.
Yeah.
I've heard Tim Ferriss say to get out of your mind, you have to get into your body. And
absolutely.
And I feel like that's exactly what you've just said there, because you've not always been someone who's loved being active. Is that right?
I've got a very complicated relationship with exercise. Absolutely. Like when I lost that big amount of weight, I didn't even need to exercise. It was food. You know, food is if you want to lose a big amount of weight, look, exercise is obviously does so many benefits for you aside from, lose weight. But at that time, it wasn't a tool that I really executed a lot. Like, I walked a little bit and I went to the gym occasionally, but it wasn't a big part of my life.
Yeah.
Until more recently, when I realized I was in my head a lot and my mental health was suffering, and I was like, I need to get out of my head and into my body.
Yeah.
And that I started using a spin bike and going walking and doing that sort of thing. And really, in the past I was so afraid of getting that, feeling quite sick when because when you're really unfit and then you go to start exercising all of a sudden, it's quite an unfamiliar and uncomfortable feeling.
Yes.
And I was like, I had avoided that for such a long time, but now I seek it, I embrace it. I'm like, yes, this is what my body can do. And it might feel awful for a minute, but I feel so incredible afterwards. And now I know that I'm someone that can actually give myself a healthy dose of endorphins through a form of exercise that we're supposed to move, like our bodies are meant to move. And so I guess it's taken me a really long time to get to that healthy place with exercise.
Yeah. It's interesting because there are so many people who would have no idea what you're talking about because they're yet to get there. And I think the fact that you've had this journey where you haven't always loved moving or loved exercise, yet you're now recognizing how it makes you feel is so worth it. And I love actually what you say that your sort of craving has sort of changed to feeling uncomfortable because you know how good you're going to feel afterwards.
Yeah. And I mean, it's the same thing with the ice bath. You feel so uncomfortable when you first do it. You're hyperventilating. You want to get the hell out of it. You're like, you think you're going to die, and you're panicking. And I think, I'm like I said, like I've always been a real comfort seeker. I love my comfort zones, but I realized that they were so damaging to me, and I really wasn't going to become the kind of person I wanted to be if I stayed there.
Yeah.
And so I had to actually start seeking things that helped me get uncomfortable. And that was exercise. That was lifting weights. That was doing yoga and holding poses that were just like brutal, or getting on my spin bike and go, I don't like to get to the point that I want to throw up, but, getting to the point that you're exerting yourself, and it is hard work.
Yeah.
And I guess I started to find that quickly helped me get out of my head, and it gave me a sense of freedom in a way, because it was like, wow, I can change my mood if I want to, because I'm one of these people. I might wake up in the morning and ego kicks into gear. I don't want to get out of bed. I'd just rather lay here and, like you start going over, and the narrative that you run in your head is, I'm never going to be this or that. And we start really getting into that negative narrative. Yeah. And I found that I used the Mel Robbins trick, the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So the 5-second rule: get out of bed, get on your walking shoes, go for a walk. That was my first sort of foray into kind of like getting out of my own way.
Yeah. Okay. So you mentioned Mel Robbins.
Yeah.
Does she have a book? Does she have a podcast? What are the tools that you've used for that, Michelle? Because I feel like, so you're right about the weight loss side of things. People can lose weight. There are any number of ways which people are able to drop kilos, etc., and get to the place where they feel they want to be, but it's actually staying there. And that's the bit that you're talking about, that that's the balance that you're trying to find.
Yeah.
So outside of the food and exercise, any like resources, tools, podcasts
loads.
You listen to? Cool.
Loads.
Let us have them.
Yes. So Mel Robbins, obviously, if no one knows who she is a life coach. That's what she first started as, and now she's like a published author. She's got a whole lot of books. The 5-second rule. She's got the high five, where you high five yourself in the mirror. Like there's a whole lot of really great stuff. I'm a big fan of mirror work, which is also Louise Hay does that, but a lot of people feel very confronted by standing in the mirror and talking to themselves. Yep. Whereas Mel Robbins does the whole high five, which is, you high five someone, and that energy behind that is so positive. If you went to high five someone after, you're an athlete and you finish a race, someone high fives you, that you feel that, like that energy is so amazing. And so her whole thing behind that is that you don't even need to say the words. You can wake up and feel like shit. And if you can just high five yourself in the mirror, it's like, hey, girl, I've got your back,
Nice. Yeah, love
so that kind of thing is really helpful. So all the books, obviously there's the Mel Robbins 5-second rule, Dopamine Nation, obviously, which you just talked about.
Yeah.
How to Do the Work by, I've got these all written down so I can share them with you.
Awesome.
How to Do the Work by Nicole LaPera. So she's a holistic psychologist. I found her really amazing. Another one, obviously, that I think everyone needs to read, it is like my Bible, which is Atomic Habits by James Clear, which I think most people have probably heard of James Clear. He's pretty amazing.
Yeah.
A few ones that probably people may not have heard of, really basic books, but Mindless Eating audiobook, which is a great one. It's quite old, but it's got some really good like things in there that we don't often, it's not just centered around food. It's actually, centered around the way that we're viewing things, the way we store food, like that kind of thing. And quite basic stuff, like the plates you use and contrasting colours and stuff like that you kind of don't always think about. Like these are little tricks that can be quite helpful. Accidentally Overweight by Libby Weaver. There's so much good stuff in that. And then in terms of 2 books that really helped me are In the Realm of Hungry Ghosts and Scattered Minds, which are by Dr. Gabor Mate.
Gabor Mate.
Yeah. So he's a doctor and he is a therapist and all sorts of amazing things, but he basically has his own, he's worked in the streets of downtown, where is it? Vancouver, I think it is, where, they're shooting up, like big, like serious addiction. And he sort of, he has a shopping addiction. And I know, to compare shopping addiction to a cocaine or heroin addiction is kind of not the same thing. People sort of think, well, they're completely separate. But what he sort of found was through watching people that use drugs or use food, like they're the same kind of thing. One's extreme, of course, if you're shooting out heroin, that's extreme. And if you're shopping, for reasons other than, what you need or, of course we can still have things that we desire and want. But, if you're going out for that hit, it's the same thing when we eat, we're seeking that hit. So really understanding like addiction was something that was so helpful for me because I grew up with a father who was an alcoholic, serious addiction, used a lot of pain pills, that kind of thing. So I guess it was helpful for me to understand that, one, I've got that genetic predisposition within me. Yeah. And I needed to like recognize that is actually something I need to be very careful of. Mm-hmm. I have a hugely addictive personality. Like I'm all into something, I'm all in or I'm all out, Yeah. And I really wanted to find that balance. So I guess, reading a lot of these books really has helped me go deeper. Yeah. And not just think about, well, how do I look and what I'm eating and what's on my plate? I mean, all that stuff's important. Absolutely, 100%. But how we breathe, how we think, how we perceive, all those things are like honestly just so important. One of my favorite sayings is, we don't see the way the world is, we see the way we are, through our own eyes. We're not really seeing it in the actual reality because we're seeing it through our own reality. It's all through our perception. Yeah.
Totally. And, I love how you are like those resources, they sound amazing. And I agree with you with that addiction type thing, like whether it's, because I see a lot of people who are completely addicted to exercise. Yeah, completely. Yeah. And now, of course, there's a good vehicle for that because you've got Ironman, you've got ultra running, you've got these reasons for getting out and doing hours upon hours of exercise every weekend. And that is totally my personality. So, through my 20s and 30s, I was absolutely driven to be as active as I could, then really berated myself when I would like just break. And it's taking me such a long time to actually realize that it's not like I still in the weekends sort of fight against that envy that people can go out and run for 4 hours, whereas there's no way that I physically could do that and then still do everything that I wanted to do. So I have these moments of FOMO when I see what other people do. I'm like, oh, I wish I was that awesome. But actually I totally recognize that there's no need to do it. And I feel like that's like, for me, that recognizing that has been like it's been quite powerful because it has then changed sort of the course of, I don't know, what I do, and it enables me to put my energies elsewhere. Like if I was using all of my energy every single weekend to go out on missions every single weekend, then I wouldn't be able to run my business, have a podcast, do all those sorts of things.
Yeah, burnout. Hello.
Yes, I know. But it is a constant battle, Yeah. And when you surround yourself with people who do that and it's very normalized. Yeah. You have to, stepping back from that is hard too because it's part of your identity.
Absolutely.
And have you had an identity shift over the last few years, Michelle, with regards to the information you put out or how you want to be seen or perceived? Like, or is that just me looking at the changes on social media and thinking in my head, has Michelle changed that? Or, how has it been?
I guess, gosh, when I first started this whole kind of self-exploration, understanding myself and understanding my body and all of those things and really wanting to kind of not master it, but kind of really get in touch with what's driving a lot of these behaviors. I was so in and I was often quite dogmatic about stuff. If I found the way that worked for me, that was it. That was the way that worked and it was the only way. Yeah. And then I've quickly realized that was not, one, it's really off-putting to people because, you come off sounding pretty arrogant when you think that you know everything about certain things. And I guess there was a lot of lessons in humility, knowing that I don't know everything and there is so much for me to learn and I need to be open-minded. I need to be expansive. I can't just think, or this is the only way, because there are a lot of different ways to reach your goals, like that it can be done through so many different modalities. And I think that's what's helped me, I guess, always evolve.
Yeah.
Always thinking, okay, so, like example, we know that from anyone that's followed me, first it was all about weight loss. It was all just about that. I was so focused on that. Then I sort of lost a lot of my weight, kind of got a little bit over it because I just found it was just so intense and everyone was talking about it, and I was just like, oh, I'm kind of done with this. Kind of went into the body positivity realm, and that's when I started to gain some weight and, had emotional issues going on. And then I was like, oh my God, I need to find the balance again. And then, I started decorating my house, and there was just all sorts of little different avenues. But what I've learned through a lot of that was what I was seeking creativity. And a lot of that, I was seeking physical creativity. I needed to do something with my hands other than just focusing on, I guess, everything being so serious. Like, when you're talking about health and nutrition and behavioral change, these are quite serious topics, and we don't often allow ourselves to like play and do something that's fun and like explore our creativity. We just don't do that because we're so focused on the goals that we've set and we've got to make them happen. And I guess through, learning to meditate, doing my ice baths, getting in the garden, going for, walks for fun, not just for exercise, and going to the beach and swimming and all those things, because I love doing all that sort of stuff. I think it's helped me reconnect with that playful side of me, because I think that was really missing.
Yeah.
And I think it's missing for a lot of people.
Yeah, 100%, right? And if there is something missing, then you're going and you haven't quite discovered what that is, maybe you'll do what you were describing with sort of eating and stuff. You'll look for it elsewhere.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. That reminds me, like, to use a nutrition analogy, but when people are like, I really want chocolate, and then they have 5 different things which aren't chocolate, and then have chocolate.
And then have chocolate.
yeah, totally.
Because what they actually wanted was a chocolate. But, it's... when you are interested in something and really passionate about getting into it, like you find that like you're not hunting in the kitchen and looking for food, because you've actually got something else that's, you're actually interested in something that's stimulating your brain and doing something that's exciting. Because I know for a lot of people it can be boredom. They're just bored.
Yeah,
and they get on their phone and they scroll, and then they feel like shit. Then they get off the phone and they go to the pantry, or it's just, and we get stuck in this kind of work, hustle. Everyone's in this like side business, and you're like, I'm all for that, because like I run my own business, and I've run 2 businesses at once, and it's exhausting. And when I just stepped back and was like, okay, I need to actually give myself permission to have creativity every day.
Yep.
However that looks, whether because I sew, I knit, I do a lot of these kind of old-fashioned things. Garden is just because, I just love getting my garden. And those things have allowed me that kind of exploration outside of just the self of improvement in terms of physical improvement, or, it can be quite exhausting sometimes in this kind of like coaching world and health coaching world. We're always like, wanting to be better. And I'm all for that. But sometimes it's exhausting, and we need to take a step back and go, what about just being?
Yes. How much, when are you enough?
Enough,
Yeah, totally.
You don't always need to be changing, you can actually just stop and be. And I think that's the hard thing about being in this kind of being on the internet all the time and being on the socials, is that we're constantly in this comparison mode, as everyone knows. And when we're living in that state, we're living in that adrenaline's always going, and we're always sort of seeking, we're never just like, okay, well, am I like, what do I actually want? What makes me happy? Stop and ask those questions, like sit down with yourself, journal. We don't do that. And a lot of the work that I do with women now is actually getting them to take the time to slot into their week. Hey, how about we sit down and actually discover what it is that brings you joy? What is it that you want to do with your life? Are you just so busy and hectic with filling your day with all this other stuff that you're actually not fulfilled? Yeah. And when you're not fulfilled, you often seek food, or you seek things outside of yourself to fulfill that. Yeah.
Do you know, Michelle, when I talk to people about, because obviously this is my job to talk to them about their diet, and people are very quick to take advice on diet, particularly because I'm a so-called expert. Yet when I have conversations like that with them, they almost don't expect it in the conversation that we have. So people who work with you, they're probably all in for that and they're really wanting to explore that. Whereas if people haven't thought about it before, then they don't see the link between what makes them happy and how do I get back into my size 12 jeans? You know, they're like, or they think that being happy means getting into those size 12 jeans, but actually it's that overall life fulfillment that's preventing them from naturally being in a body that is natural for them, and they feel satisfied and happy about it.
Yeah, like I think, and I do get a bit of obviously clients a lot they come for different reasons, but often weight loss is obviously a very prevalent thing for a lot of them. They want to lose weight, but at the same time they want to be happy. They realize they've probably lost weight before and then it hasn't led to the life they thought it was going to. And so, my philosophy really is like thinking about the 4 pillars of vitality. The 4 pillars of vitality are the things that I make sure are always centered around our health. So mental, physical, spiritual, and emotional well-being.
Yeah. And now how have you framed this? So is this from the reading that you've done? Is this the framework you work with people? How does that sort of fit into your coaching?
I mean, a lot of this has come through my own journey. So it's not come by, of course I read a lot of books. I have taken courses. But at the end of the day, I sat down, I worked out like, well, what did I do?
Yeah.
And then and then of course, when I first began, which like 3 years ago now, I was like, you're so new and you're sort of starting out and you kind of figure out what kind of works for people, what doesn't, and like what errors you might have made, and kind of being critical enough to sort of like assess like what's really going to help people and what they really need and what they want. And I think, everyone comes for the physical. Yeah. Everyone, like you said, they want to fit the size 12 jeans. They want it. They just they're so some people are so desperate, and I get that desperation because I've been there. So I'm totally empathetic to it. But at the same time, I'm like, if you don't work on that spiritual side and connecting with yourself, I'm not talking about God. I'm just talking about getting in like with what's going on for you deep down. If you don't get in touch with that, if you don't look after your mental, your mental well-being. If you don't go and do activities that you enjoy and bring you joy, if you don't connect with others, you're still going to feel exactly the same as you do now, but in a smaller body.
Yeah.
And it's not going to bring you the joy that you think it will, because I've been there. I was 54 kilos when I got to my last weight and I was miserable. Yeah. Absolutely miserable.
Yeah, crazy.
Yeah. So it took me, I guess, learning that and then knowing that, a number or a size is not where happiness resides.
Yeah.
Not at all.
Yeah.
But the two can coexist. You can still strive for happiness and go wanting to get to the size that you want to get to, but at the same time you still got to do the work. You got to do the inner work. You've really got to. And if you don't, you're going to learn the hard way. Yeah. Eventually.
Yeah. No, totally. And you're right, there aren't actually any shortcuts. And because it feels like there are opposing camps out there within the I don't even know. I'll just call it the diet culture or that space, right? Where you've got people like me who are like, hey, I can absolutely help you lose weight, and I also and I help them. Obviously I don't have the same skill set as you, and I have a different experience than you. Yeah. So we work together and get them feeling, get them sort of improve their body composition and help heal some of that stuff inside as well. Yeah. But then you've got people who are absolutely opposed to the diet side of things and think that that's the two are mutually exclusive. Like you can't work on both at the same. You can't do body positivity and weight loss at the same time. Whereas I've never thought I've never seen that they have to be mutually exclusive. Like
absolutely.
Yeah. So it's, people find it confusing.
Yeah, absolutely. And we are in this world of like, body positivity can be, it's elements of it are really beautiful and well-meaning, and then other elements of it, it's very dogmatic and you can't lose weight if you're body positive, and it's like it's such an area of confusion. It was for me, and I was always like, well, so I can just eat whatever I want and just be happy with my body, and and it was like, actually no, that's actually not treating my body with kindness. Like that is not treating my body with kindness. And so I had to learn, okay, so there is a place for having good nutrition that's going to help you think better. It's going to help you mentally in so many ways. It's going to help you have more energy. It's, it's going to help you show up and do this other work. Because if you are completely filling your diet full of junk, and just being a kind of like, whatever approach, and my body will be able to be, and I'll learn this, to just love myself. It's like, well, yeah, like, of course you can love yourself and still be working on yourself at the same time. Like, they don't need to actually be opposing views. You totally can. And in fact, it's really vital, because especially if you've been super, like, overweight, like I have, like over 100 kgs for my height, you're left with a lot of loose skin. You're left with a body that is never probably going to be maybe what you thought it would be in your future. You probably never thought it would be like that. And so there is an amount of acceptance that you have to bring when you even like, you might have muscles underneath some loose skin, and you're like, well, it's never going to be all tight and taut and perfect, because I've been 40 something kilos overweight and my body is stretched. And it's like, you have to, that's what I mean by, if you're just focused on the physical, then you're going to be disappointed, because you're going to get to that weight and you're going to go, well, actually, it probably doesn't look the way I thought it would. And if you just work on the emotional and ignore the physical, then you're not really going to be very healthy either, because I think the two need to go together. Yeah. Honestly.
Yeah. No, I completely agree. And, Michelle, I feel like the work that you've done on the inner and on the inside, I imagine that it must have been quite helpful for you over the last couple of years, because I know that because you've been quite public about it on social, that you've had a couple of health issues, which meant that you've had to be more restrictive with your diet in order to try to get to the bottom of them. And for some people, that might have been a trigger to have gone down a rabbit hole to then rebound and go backwards. Whereas, and I'm not sure, I mean, maybe it's just what and it is all what I see on social, but I don't feel like that's been the space for you. So has that helped you in that regard as well?
Yeah, I guess sometimes it can be good. I have a couple of things that have sort of happened for me, and more recently, I'm sort of dealing with some health issues in terms of my own, but also with my mum. My mum's really unwell at the moment. And so that has sent me a little bit down like I want to eat because that's always been my go-to. It's always been my go-to. But then I've dealt with a lot of that stuff, and I'm like, well, I can't eat anymore. Like, I need to find something else, and I need to really deal with the stuff. Sometimes going back to a beginner level can actually be really helpful for me then working with a client, because sometimes I forget how hard it is.
Yeah,
when you're battling that inner critic and it's so loud and you haven't understood how to communicate with it yet, because that really is like your inner critic is like your best friend with like lousy communication skills.
That's a great way to put it. That is great. Yeah.
So you have to learn to get okay with, I guess, failing to a degree, failing and not seeing, I always think failing forward, thinking about, okay, so right, I've done this and it hasn't worked, and now I need to go back to the drawing board, and I might need to adapt some things, I might need to look at some things. I've dealt with migraines for like most of my life. They're vestibular migraines, so it gives me vertigo. And so I've had a lot of health issues, and I still deal with them. And more recently, I've been to a specialist who's helped me get further down into like the kind of mast cell activation, the histamine issues, that sort of stuff. And so it does make it a little bit tricky, because I'm all about balance with food and having kind of everything, but at the same time, I do need to sometimes be a little bit stricter, because I'll have a health flare. It'll flare up and I'll feel terrible, and then I feel like I go downhill and that sort of thing. So I do need to often bring it back. I've done keto for migraine, as you've helped me with, which was great, but at the same time it messes with my sleep. So there's things that you have to toy with, and I think understanding, I think always coming with an open mind and a beginner mindset, and knowing that I don't have all the answers. Like, when I talk to my clients, I'm not like sitting there going, you need to eat this, this, and this. Like, I'm all about balance, but at the same time, how about if you're someone that has a lot of binging issues, maybe we need to look at this and go outside, like source outside as well. I'm not just going to be like, well, eat what I eat, because it's not going to help anyway. Like we're so individual and we need different approaches. And so I guess, I am very public about my struggles and what I go through. And while at the same time trying to keep balance, and even when I did a sort of like a liver detox with Dr. Libby, and that was a lot of really great food. It was great whole foods. It wasn't really anything too crazy. But of course, as soon as you say no refined sugar, no dairy, no gluten, it's like, oh my God, that's like, what else is left? But there's actually, so much. And I think that inspired a lot of people, because they were sort of like, well, how can you just do that? Because I've enrolled in the same course, but I haven't done any of the diet stuff. And I'm like, well, this is where you've got to get your mind to a good place. Because if your mind's not in the right place, you can go on any diet, but you won't stick to it. You won't follow through, because you're not in a good place with yourself emotionally. So when you are feeling crappy and you want to go and use food and you want to get a sugar hit, you're going to do that if you haven't learned other techniques. For myself, for instance, lately with dealing with my mum and that sort of stuff that's going on, I have to dig deep, man. Like I have to dig deep. Yeah. I have to sit with it. I have to lean into it. I have to, I go and have an ice bath. I do a meditation. Every now and then it happens that I'm ending up on the couch with like a bowl of ice cream that I probably wouldn't have done before. But I'm also very honest with all my clients about that. I'm like, you know what? I still struggle. Yeah. I'm not going to sit here and preach that I've got it all figured out. I still have my moments, but I'm very good now, I guess, and this is what I think meditation has afforded me, is having the space between the stimulus and the response.
Yeah.
So when I get that like urge and that feeling festering up in me that I'm like feeling super uncomfortable and I want to just soothe it straight away, I'm really good at being able to stop and go, what is this? What am I feeling? Mm-hmm. What is the emotion? And often we can't define it in the moment. We can't sit there and go, well, I'm feeling sad, because it actually could be another feeling that we can't articulate at the time. We might just be feeling a little despondent or a little bit let down, and we don't associate that with being sad, or maybe we're frustrated, but we don't think that means that we're angry. There's just so many emotions that we just, I think as young people, we're not taught how to really tap in.
Yeah. Yep.
How to really tap into that.
Yeah.
And so that's something I've learned. I guess I've learned, and I'm still learning, that not to be afraid of your emotions, because it's just an emotion and it won't kill you. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And leaning into it is actually really helpful, because it tells you a lot about yourself.
Amazing, Michelle. And I feel like it's your honesty and openness. That's why you connect with so many people on social, because everyone knows now that a curated social media account is just that. Very few people I know would ever buy into someone who is perfect. Yet also you get the people who are almost perfect, yet they appear to be disheveled once in a while to show you that they're normal. Where and that always makes me laugh almost as much. But you, like, with you're really open and honest. And whilst there are periods of time, like when you do the Dr. Libby liver detox, which I actually, from a diet perspective, in my head, when you sort of embarked and did that, I just thought, well, that's just old hat for you. You've been, this is just
you've been doing this for
years. So it's no surprise. But it's that, what we define as balance, because balance is health at the end of the day. And if you include everything in your diet to have a balanced diet, that might not mean that you're balanced, because something else will shift out.
Off.
So I think people sort of have to understand that, because from a nutrition perspective, the traditional conventional approach is to have a balanced diet, but that means your health is out of whack.
Yeah.
I think that's what you understand, and that's what you show that you do.
Yeah, for sure. My husband always says that my vulnerability and transparency is my superpower.
100%.
Because I'm okay with sharing my struggles and shining a light on it, in fact, because I'm like, this is what makes us human. This is how we connect. Like, and we are here for connection. We're here for love. We're here to learn. We're not here to just show perfect. Like, am I going to celebrate victories when I have them? Absolutely. But am I also going to show when I'm struggling and I'm going through tough times? For sure. I think they both need to be shown, because we are in such a world of we just get so hyper focused on the outcome.
Yeah, 100%.
And not about the process. That process is it's all about the process.
Yeah. And your what you said about sitting in that space between stimulus and response is that's something which is so difficult to learn. And if people can't do that, then it's, that's the bit that people do have to work on, right? Because therefore you then create that space to respond differently.
Absolutely. And that's when you actually start to change your behaviors.
Yeah, completely.
And so, we often go into a diet with like a mindset of like, right, I'm never going to eat sugar ever again.
Yeah.
And it's like, look, like we'd all like to say that, but we are wired for sweet, and if you're someone who's going to go from eating a lot of sugar every day to zero, that's probably not going to work. Like you might have to slow it down with some other things, making sure you've got some fruit in there. Like, you've got to be realistic.
Yeah.
And I just think so many people are not realistic. They're like, right, I'm going to cut out all of these things and then I'm never going to eat them again. And it's like, well, like, it's great intentions. We all have great intentions, but then when you set the expectation that high, you've only got one place to go, and that's down.
100%. My two major things I did to change my diet when I came across Mark's Daily Apple and Sarah Wilson.
Yes, Sarah Wilson. Yeah,
amazing.
Amazing.
Was I cut? I immediately quit gum, which I had a massive addiction to.
Yes,
I was only addicted during the week. I could absolutely go without on the weekend, but when I was at work, I had to go through 2 packets every day or else I'd get anxious.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, so you had that like chewing was the thing. It
stopped me eating. It distracted me from other uncomfortable things, and I got a dopamine hit every time I had a new piece in my mouth, basically. And that was from my early 20s. And then I also was a massive diet soda fan.
Me too.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Me too.
And I completely cut it out until about 3 years ago. And now I enjoy a diet soda a couple of times a week.
Yep.
And
nice.
I don't feel like I'm killing myself with every single drop. And I think that's actually progress.
And it is progress because you've got to think like, I know you and I were sort of in the same sphere for a long time in this, those years where it was like never have a diet soda ever again. And it was very just like so frowned upon. And it's like, like obviously you don't want to be living on them, but it's actually the dose makes the poison. Like you've got to think, okay, so like, because I was, I went from drinking so much of that stuff and then I was like, right, I'm going to just have like my soda water and like my herbal tea, my LaCroix, and that's all good. But every now and then I do go out and I do have like a kombucha that's got, some sweetener in it, like, a bit of artificial sweetener in it or something, or a little bit of sugar. It's like, we can't, if it's not good for us mentally, it's not good for us physically either. I think.
100%. I totally agree. Yeah.
Yeah. Because if you're in that restricted headspace all the time, that is not good for you.
No, I know. And I recognize that about myself. And that's like, there are some things which I would never be a good idea for me to completely abstain from because that would just encourage my restrictive mindset, which
absolutely
has been with me for so long. And that's it goes quite nicely with that obsessive exercise tendency. So, like they just, for some people, it just go hand in hand. So it's like a need to keep balance. One thing I will not do is go back to chewing gum though. There was nothing good about that habit.
Nothing good comes from chewing gum.
No. So Michelle, can we just finish off by you telling me how do you work with clients and like how does that look and whether or not you are in fact working with clients?
Yes. So the way that I work is we normally do like a 12-week program. So I don't do any less than 12 weeks because in fact, in an ideal world, I would work with someone for a year.
Yeah.
Because slow weight loss is really what I think is going to be permanent for most people.
100%.
And it's funny, because I do a bit of group coaching and I had a group, one of my group participants who's quite young, she was very skeptical to begin with and she was like, I don't know, like I would just want to jump on keto and just do that, and I know that all my friends are doing it, and I'm like, look, like there's nothing inherently wrong with that, but is that something you can see yourself doing for like a long period of time? No. Okay, cool. So do we want to find balance? Yes. So she discovered that this work does work if you do the work and you actually trust the process. So ideally we do 12 weeks. I work every week. We do a call, so like a Zoom meeting every week, check-ins multiple times during the week just to see how you're going and like checking in. Are you meditating? Are you doing the things that I'm sort of asking of you? So I kind of give everyone, particularly in my one-on-one, it's like, we're getting a little bit more in depth in one-on-one than I do with group, because of course you can, in a group setting, not everyone's feeling that vulnerable that they can share everything. But in one-on-one, we can get a little deeper. And so we kind of go through each week. I kind of have modules, I guess, that you could say, like, 1 week it might be we're talking about boundaries and like setting boundaries. And like, that's really a hugely important part of learning to respect yourself and show up for yourself, is setting those boundaries. Learning discipline, understanding, it does require discipline, and then you get freedom from that. It's liberating, and like it's really how we start to carve out the person that we want to be. Yeah, nice. Yeah. And so, there's I obviously, for the first sort of 6 weeks, we work a lot around mindset. Mm-hmm. It's clearly mostly mindset in the first 6 weeks. And then after that, we sort of work a little bit more on, how we can find that balance with food, how we can find having a healthy relationship with food, and, how that looks for each different person, because I think it is different. Like you just said before, having a diet soda for you now is actually something that's been really powerful for you, and like it's now looks like success. I think that's important for people, because people can come from a super restrictive background of never allowing themselves to have dessert when they go out. Mm-hmm. And then we can have the extreme other end that they have 2 desserts when they go out, and they, are having it all. So it's finding, I think everyone's very different. And so I don't go in with this super dogmatic approach that it's a blanket, rule for everyone. It's just, this is kind of what I think is going to be helpful for you, and let's see what's working for you, what's going to be sustainable. And I think that, it's hard with coaching, because with one-on-one, it is a massive trusting process. You've really got to trust the process, because like I explained to people, it is like going into your wardrobe, pulling all of your clothes out of your wardrobe, throwing them on the ground and going, I'm going to sort my wardrobe out. And then you pull everything out, and then you look at the ground and you're like, oh my God, why did I do this? Why did I start? Oh, I'm really regretting it now. Like, I've got to take these clothes to the Salvation Army, and these ones I might sell. And, eventually you start going through it, and it's like messy action, really, And a lot of people don't like messy, they just want to put things in a box and just either put them away and leave them there, or if I bring them out, that means I have to deal with them.
100%. What a great analogy.
So that's what we're doing. We're dealing with it. We're again setting aside time, which often people don't allow themselves that time, because they're like, I'm too busy for this, and it's like, well, like, are you too busy to have a great relationship with yourself and move forward? Because a lot of people are holding themselves back, like I said, getting in their own way, and I've certainly lived that a lot of years, and it's taken me a long time to get to a place of balance. Yeah, nice. And it's something I still work on. So I work with people one-on-one. I have probably got another spot coming up very soon. And then I really want to get a group together. People have been a bit, the financial part's always a little bit tricky. People don't want to always invest in group. But I'm actually working on a program now, which I'm going to do for a little bit more achievable for more people, so a little bit lesser financial commitment. Amazing. But it's going to be a little bit more self-led. You know, as you can't be in all places at all times, so you have to sort of adapt. So that's going to be happening. I'm working on that at the moment. So,
well, Michelle, would it be all right once it's sort of at that stage if I get you back and we can talk about the components of it? Because I think people would be so interested. Because I think it's what the work that you do is so important. And you're right, that financial barrier for some does make it hard, because there's one Michelle. Yeah. Yet also, if you can make your knowledge just a bit more accessible via, say, a course or whatever, then a lot more people can benefit. Scalability, man, saves everyone.
I know, and that's what I've had to learn. Like, obviously it's like, when you do something, like, I just want to make sure that it comes across right, and that people are like doing the work, because it's always the whole, you've got to do the work. Like, you can lead the horse to water, but you can't make it drink, sort of thing. It's that same thing. Like, I could share all the content in the world, but people could still not do the work. And so I guess there's been that tug with me that I'm like, I don't want to put this out there and then people not do it.
Yeah.
But at the same time, that's not my responsibility. I really need to just trust the process and know that, if people, I guess, resonate with me and with what I've got to share, they will do it.
100%. Totally agree. Yeah.
So it's, trusting the process myself as well.
No, I love it, Michelle. And thank you so much. Like, you've shared so many useful, amazing resources, which I think people would really benefit from. Even just some of those initial sort of mindset, the Dopamine Nation, Gaba Mate, was it?
Yeah, Dr. Gaba Mate, yeah. Some of this stuff's quite heavy going, but I've got some really great podcast specific episodes that I can actually give you and link you.
That would be amazing.
They were quite pivotal for me. So, I will definitely give you those.
Excellent.
Because some stuff can be quite heavy going and it can get a bit intense. So you got to make sure that, I don't overwhelm people with, it's kind of like yourself, all the nutrition geeky nerd stuff, but you've got to make it accessible for other people to digest.
Totally. That's my thing, eh? It's like I just I say too much and then people get like, what? You lost me.
Yeah. I know a lot of that stuff because I'm super nerdy and geeky and I love science and I love all that stuff, and so I get it. But a lot of people it gets lost on them because it just goes over their head and they're like, what are you talking about? What? Like ghrelin, leptin? What do you mean?
Yeah, totally. 100%. Yeah. So if you are able to give me those links, that would be amazing.
Yeah.
Where can people find you?
So you can find me at michellematangi.com, which is my website. So you can book a discovery call through that.
Fantastic.
You can find me at Instagram, which is Michelle Matangi, and I'm on Facebook as well. Same thing. Michelle Matangi everywhere. And then email is just hello@michellematangi.com.
It's easy. And I will obviously put those links in the show notes. Michelle, thanks for your time. You've been amazing.
Thank you so much, Mikki.
And I have to say, I've learned so much and so many kind of techniques and tools from your page that I share with people as well. And I love the whole sort of learning community and that we're all basically here for the same reason. And the more that we can sort of help each other, the more we're able to help other people as well. So it's awesome.
Yeah, all about collaboration over competition, for sure. And I've always loved connecting with you, Mikki. I mean, I remember coming to your talks a long, long, long time ago, and you'd come up and give me a big hug, and you've just always been such a beautiful support. So thank you so much.
Oh, you're welcome. Awesome. Well, you have a lovely day in your garden.
Yeah, I will. You too. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you.
Cheers, Mikki.
All right, team, hope you really enjoyed that interview, and you can find Michelle over on her website, michellematangi.com, and she is taking clients and she has a free discovery call if you want to find out if she would be a good fit for you. Of course, you can also go and follow her on Instagram as well. Such a wealth of information over there. So next week on the podcast, I have an awesome conversation with Professor Ama Dolan, who is based over in Brazil, about her work in bone metabolism, and also we touch briefly on low energy availability from an evolutionary perspective. Until then though, you can catch me over on Facebook at Mikki Williden Nutrition, over on Instagram and Twitter at Mikki Williden, or on my website, mikkiwilliden.com, where in addition to the recipe portal access, you can sign up to one of my meal plans or book a one-on-one consultation with me with all of the benefits which I described earlier in the podcast. All right, team, you have a great week and look forward to catching up with you soon. See you later.